Welcome everyone to the Pearson Business Book Club. My name is Eloise Cook and I'm the publisher for the professional business list at Pearson. If you've not joined before, we choose a Pearson business or personal development book each month at the author on to discuss it. They'll also give a masterclass on a key concept from the book. And don't forget, if you need to leave halfway, we're recording this and it will be available at the book club website. I will pop that into the chat. Everyone, yes, I'm going to pop that into the chat for everyone if you're not familiar. So our book this month is Winning Together by Patricia, Hind, and Vicky Holton. If you've not got a copy through the Patricia, welcome. Can you hear me okay?
I can't hear you very well.
I can't hear you very well.
No, I'm afraid.
Oh, right. People hear me okay? I'll continue. I'll wait for people to say stuff in the chat. So we want you to use our Q&A function if you have any questions, and we'll answer them at the is Patricia Hind, who is a psychologist development at Ashridge Executive Education. That's a bit of a mouthful. A specialist in leadership and executive development. She has worked globally. Oh, I can see some stuff in the chat. Okay, let me turn off my video. That might help. I hope that's better. Okay, sorry about the bad connection, everyone. So our book of the month is Winning Together. Hope you can hear me okay. And I'll reintroduce our author, since you couldn't hear me. Professor Patricia Hind is a chartered business psychologist, researcher, author, and professor of leadership and management development at Ashridge Executive Education, a specialist in leadership and executive development. She has worked globally with individuals across all sectors to develop the leadership capability needed to ensure sustainable success. She has authored many articles and contributed to many books, all aiming to enhance personal governor. That's very exciting. All right, stop sharing. Welcome, Patricia. I'm sorry I'm off camera, but it's really good to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Thanks very much, Eloise. It's lovely to be here.
Great. So we have the same sort of questions that we ask every time. Would you mind telling us, why did you want to write this book?
The timing of the book was post-pandemic, and we were very aware of people feeling quite confused about what was happening in the world of work. There were a lot of changes. We'd all been through a lot of changes. And we initially thought we wanted to write a book that dealt solely with the post-pandemic issues of managing relationships at work. We morphed that a little bit. It became broader. It's actually a much more broad-ranging book now than the original intent. And it's now not simply about post-pandemic working relationships, but pretty much about all working relationships. And the phrase we've used is navigating the relationship landscape, which is constantly changing and evolving, and bumps are coming up and rivers are flowing away. So it's about helping people to get the relationships that they need right so that they can be productive, so that organizations can be successful.
Something that, you know, anyone working in any organization can benefit from.
Absolutely. At any level, in any occupation, you know, it's kind of not directed at technical versus non-technical. It's not directed at people who work in big teams or people who work largely alone. It's anybody who has anything to do with anybody else, really, in the workplace.
Great. And here's our second question. What surprised you about writing this book?
It's an interesting question, actually, and I think there were two main things. The first one was that we found, pretty much as you'd expect, really, if we'd stopped to think about it in specific terms, people haven't changed. People are people, and getting on with other people. It's an age-old issue, making relationships work well. But what has changed is some of the boundaries and the expectations about how we should relate. You know, on a very simple level, we have had things like understanding changes in email etiquette, for example, you know, never press the button in anger, that sort of thing. But a huge issue we found working with our clients was around camera management. When you're working from home, should you have your camera on? Should you be compelled to have your camera on? Some people find it quite distressing to be on camera all the time. Other people, of course, love it. So there were different issues that came up, even though people hadn't changed particularly, but relationship issues have evolved. And the other thing that was a real surprise, certainly to me, was how working with my two co-authors was in fact a mirror of what we were writing about, because we write very differently. We're very different people. We have different things we want to say. And working together kind of threw up everything that we were talking about. How did we manage a disagreement? Did we notice a disagreement? How did we get on if we felt somebody was being a bit bossy, you know, and taking the lead, whereas we were all supposedly equal co-authors? So it was like a learning lab, really, and we were able to bat ideas across and reflect on whether what we were experiencing, which was very real about working together, was actually coming through in the book. So that was not only surprising, but really interesting.
Absolutely, and we can testify to the internet today, can't we? With my trouble today. I know I feel a bit awkward having my camera off doing this session, but let's hope it's working for now. And our last question: how do you want readers to feel about reading your book?
Well, I hope they feel very interested in reading it. I hope they find it very relevant. It's a book that you can dip in and out of. You know, if you've got a particular issue at work, you can flip through and find a chapter that's relevant, or you can read it right through, because I will explain in a few moments. It is a very wide-ranging book. It kind of goes from soup to nuts, if you like. I'd like people to feel they can use it as an aid memoir, or as a bit of a toolkit. What I'm going to talk about today is a bit of a roadmap through a particular part of our relationship landscape. I'd like people to feel it gives them a bit of security if they have a particular issue, that they will be able to find a new way to think about it, perhaps. In the book, there are lots of little self-evaluations. You know, if this is happening, what have you done? What have you tried? If your issue is over here, who else might be able to help? So there's a lot of guidance as to things to think about. And I hope people read it and think, well, that was useful.
Yes, well, that sounds really practical, and great that you can read it in a variety of ways to suit you. That sounds fantastic. Right, I won't delay things any further. So it's time for the session on why good working relationships are essential and how to build them. And remember, if anyone wants to ask a question, you can pop it in the Q&A. If you've got anything to offer, please pop it in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that. So take it away, Patricia.
Thanks very much, Eloise. And as I just try to find my slides and make sure that they come up for us all, I would just like to second that. Please use the chat. I know it's hard to be interactive on a session like this, but I'm really interested in your views, your perspectives on what I'm saying, and of course, everything that we hear, we talk about, might well go into edition 2. So we'll be gathering information as we go. So thank you. So the title of the book, Winning Together, why good working relationships are essential. Now, we kind of take that for granted, but we have in the book given that a bit of thought. What difference does it make if they don't work very well? And we all kind of know the answer to that. It's uncomfortable to work in a place where your relationships aren't good. We don't like going to work in a place where we're having difficulties with other people. So it's pretty critical. I mentioned that we started out sort of post-pandemic, and some of the things that we were thinking about were the big changes, such as the positive ones, like the flexibility that we have to work at home. How do we manage that as an individual? And what do we do to manage ourselves, our relationship with our working selves, whilst we're managing our family self as well? We're kind of multitasking as we do all of that from the same home base. So that was important. And of course, although we're now post-pandemic, that still holds for many of us. We know that many of our organizations are debating at the moment whether to insist people come in for 2 days or 4 days, whether they accept the argument that it's much more productive to work from home. So there was all that going on, which we think is critical now as it was 2 years ago. But one of the big things that we wanted to write about really was this paradox between the technology enabling us to work so very independently and so very autonomously if we want to and if we are able to. Obviously, not all jobs allow for that. But the paradox between that and the breadth of our global connections now. We are so quickly in touch with everybody. One of the issues is that instant response that's expected, whereas many of us could mull over something for a little while before we felt we had to fire back a response. So those tensions we felt were worthy of exploration. How do we focus on ourselves, focus on our small, localized, individual little work pod that might be our kitchen table, might be a little office, whatever, and still manage the breadth of the reach that we have to? I work globally, and I am constantly struggling to find a time that will fit a meeting in for clients in the States, in Asia, in the UK, or Belgium, or whatever. You know, everybody's doing this all the time, and it's another challenge, isn't it? And it's another frustration that you can't simply get on with the work before we have to deal. We've got all that admin to do. So we thought it was very topical. And this phrase again, you know, navigating the landscape, the changing landscape, just like a geographic landscape changes. And we have to learn to live without bits of coastline and to manage the damage from erosion and what have you. It's similar. Our relationship landscape is changing. So we think this is really important, and we think it merits close examination and help. We could all use a bit of help at times. So I'd like to ask you, we've made this assumption that there are these changes going on. So I'd like to ask you what sort of changes you've experienced. Have you experienced changes with your boss, with your team, with your family, or with the technology that's needed? You know, what sort of changes have you had to experience? Please let us know. Let's see what's happening. Technology is coming in, yeah. Boss, team, technology, team, technology. Okay, what have we got? It looks like team is coming out the strongest at the moment. Over a quarter of you, no, nearly all of you, 78% at the moment are saying that relationships with your team have changed. Okay, so we've got team is top, and then technology, and then we've got 42% saying relationship with the boss has changed, and 36% saying relationship with your family has changed. So all of those, you know, even the lowest score there at 36% saying relationships with your family has changed. That's a big number. That's a third of us, over a third of us. So these changes are very real. I'm interested that relationships with team are the most significant for those of you on the call. And that's an interesting finding, I think, because there's two dimensions, isn't there? There's the team that you need to support you, and there's the team that you may be leading. And those are both really critical in terms of relationships, because the peer group, the people who support you, are the ones who can keep you bouncing through, keep you resilient, keep you going, keep you motivated. And of course, you need to do that for the team that you lead. So these are important issues that we're all experiencing them. And we were very conscious of that and felt that we needed to really address these issues in our book. So we talked a little bit about those polls. I'm just trying to move my slides on now, and not having much luck. Let me see. Let me try this again. No. Okay, try this one. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I'm going to say a little tiny bit about what the book is, about the breadth of it and our agenda. So today's agenda, I'm going to talk about the breadth, what we cover, what you might find useful. I'm going to talk about a concept that we came up with called relational intelligence. Now, this is a concept that's been used quite largely in intimacy counselling, and we're not using it like that. We're using it relationships at work. Relational intelligence is what you can bring to bear to make those relationships better. I'm going to share with you a model that we came up with, which has 5 dimensions, one of which is boundaries, the boundaries of relationships. We feel that if one can understand these dimensions and focus on them, you can actually work with them, manage them, and develop them. And then I've got some tips on how to develop your relational intelligence, specifically some questions that you can ask yourself and things to consider. I'd just like to pause and say a little bit there about the questions to ask yourself, because one of the things that we found as we talked to people about the book and as we drew on our experience of working with clients over time, self-honesty is so important. Questions to ask yourself, the answers that you give yourself are really key. To go into it and say, oh, I hope I don't have to deal with him today. He is so difficult. So what is it? Is he really a horrible person? Is he really difficult? Is it something in the dynamic of the relationship that's difficult? Because most of us come to work quite nice people, wanting to do our best. We don't come to work planning to be difficult and horrible, not all of us anyway. So the honesty that's required to really manage relationships was something that we felt we needed to deal with, which is why in the book we've got lots of little self-assessments. Ask yourself this: what did you do there? What else might you have done? So that's today's agenda. The book itself is, as I've said a couple of times, very wide-ranging. We look at why working relationships are important, why it's not always wise to say, that's the office door closed at 5 o'clock. I'm going to leave it there, not even think about it anymore. Relationships are critical. It's around our well-being, how we feel about ourselves in terms of our achievements, the value that we bring to our organizations. These things are all very much tied up with our identity, and these working relationships are critical to the identity of most of us. We started why they go wrong, because actually if your relationships are beautifully nice and comfortable and they're all going swimmingly, we don't think about them very much. We don't need to worry about them too much. But it's when they go wrong and when the consequences of them going wrong matter that we really need to start unpicking them. What's the cause of that going wrong? And there's sort of we think of a progression. When you're working with somebody else, there may be a difference of opinion, a difference of a way of doing something. And difference is absolutely fine. And, all the diversity research tells us that difference is critical. We have to have it in our organizations, otherwise we stagnate. But difference, if we can't accept it and can't work with it, can become difficulty. When it's difference, we've got our own issues, they have their issues. We've got our own way of thinking, they have their way of thinking. When it becomes difficult, we start to focus much less on what they're bringing and what we're we're bringing. And so it's more about what I want rather than what you want. And when it becomes conflict, the next stage, it can become almost impossible to go back to that awareness of the other perspective. So understanding a difficulty and how one can resolve it is really important for our working relationships before we get on to that difficult and conflict-inducing stage. So there's a lot in the book around that. There's a lot about the key dimensions of relationships, and I've mentioned some of them there, how we establish trust, emotional intelligence. I think you'll probably feel familiar with that. Influencing, how we bring about influence. One of the most frequently cited relationship difficulties we've heard about is, how do I influence my boss? How do I manage upwards? Authenticity, how do you do this thing of meeting everybody's needs whilst staying true to yourself? Resilience, how do we stay resilient as all these changes come and we have to cope with them and navigate them? And that's brought us to understanding our relational intelligence and the boundaries that we may understand. And as I said, practical examples, tips and examples all the way through the book, which I hope that you really find useful. So why they're important. And I just want to make one point here, really. I've said how important we have felt relationships to be in terms of job satisfaction. But a key issue is how we relate to others determines the culture that we work in. So culture is something that is a bit intangible. We can't always describe it completely, but we know what works here. And what works here is the way we behave and the way we relate to other people. Now, the importance of culture is that it is a significant issue for all organizations. The Gallup organization has just published their State of the Global Workplace report. And they asked people, what would make your workplace better? And the top answer around the world is improve my culture, improve the culture, the way I'm treated, the way I work, the way I experience others. McKinsey have suggested that a toxic workplace culture, the biggest predictor of people leaving, of poor retention figures, of intention to quit, but not quite quitting, therefore staying and not being very productive, or indeed being quite toxic in the workplace. Not being included, not being valued, over competition, bullying, unethical behavior, Me Too. All of these things are relationship issues which determine the success of our organizations, which determine the success of our country, if you like. We need to be thriving on all these levels: individual, team, organizational, national. And so we thought it makes sense to bring an intelligent approach to how we understand these relationships. So that kind of gives me pause to think a little bit about what we mean by intelligent. Lots of different sorts of intelligence. You can have streetwise intelligence. Somebody may not have ever passed an exam, but my goodness, they know what's going on. You can have Mensa type intelligence, where you can pass many intelligent tests, but can't work out how to turn the cooker off or turn the water off in an emergency. So there's lots of different sorts of intelligences, and this is not new thinking, but we tend to be a little narrow when we think about intelligence, and that's not a good thing. We should be broader. We should accept different sorts of intelligence. We should use different sorts of intelligence, because all an intelligence is a taking in of information, transformation of some sort, working with it somehow, and then doing something with it. So we take in information from our environment, and that's why there are so many different sorts of intelligence, because we all attend to different things. I'm what's called a theorist. You may tell that from the way I'm talking. I like a good theory. I like a good book. I will learn from that. Somebody else, in fact, one of my writing colleagues, Fiona in particular, is a real practical soul. She learns from doing stuff. And when we were talking, as we were writing, I was saying, oh, you know, well, I've read about this and this might be relevant. And she said, no, because I did that and this is what happened. And our third member, Vicky, kind of watches and says, oh, well, I can synthesize that. So in some ways, you know, she's the one bringing this real intelligence to bear. But it's what you do with it, isn't it? You take information, you transform it, you interpret it, but then what you do with it is what matters. And this brings us perhaps to the artificial intelligence question. And many of you will have probably read the example of you give AI the problem, for example, of solving global warming. So AI goes and takes all that intelligence from that information from our environment, looks at what's happening, puts it all together, makes sense of it. And the output is, well, we need to exterminate the human race because you may be causing it. So it's at that output, that interpretation level that we really need to work on our proper intelligence. But we began to bring these concepts to bear, having looked at what was already around, because there's lots around. Howard Gardner in 1983 proposed all these intelligences, 8. And he's got spatial, which is around, if you have good spatial intelligence, you can make sense of a lot of patterns. You can pull things in. You can kind of do the helicopter view thing, which is really useful. If you've got linguistic intelligence, you can communicate really well. You can interpret and communicate, and that linguistic intelligence doesn't need to be verbal. You may have kinesthetic or physical intelligence. You can use your body, your skills to express, to develop in the artistic way. Musical is similar: rhythm, pitch, tone, understanding nuance. The one we normally look at is the logical, mathematical, the cognitive one, how we can score on an intelligence test, perhaps. And it's really important, but it's not quite enough. This is your geeky space, if you like. 2 on the right-hand side there, intrapersonal and interpersonal. These are really the backbone of Goleman's emotional intelligence model, understanding self, you know, looking down, doing the navel gazing bit and saying, what am I here for? What do I want? What do I need? And that's fine. And then interpersonal, understanding others' intelligence, being empathic, knowing what they're thinking, knowing what to do with that and how to use it to get what you need. What I'm going to talk to you about in terms of relational intelligence really tries to bring those 2 together. And I'll say a little bit more, because with emotional intelligence, yes, I understand me. Yes, I understand you. I don't necessarily know how to make that work particularly well, although Goleman does make some really good suggestions about how to do that. But we're just kind of going a little bit further than that. And then, of course, Gardner talked about naturalistic understanding, naturalistic intelligence, being attuned with the natural world. And that was kind of swept to one side a little bit when he was first writing. But of course, now, understanding our environment, the impact on it. I don't know if it's necessarily a personal intelligence, but it's certainly something that we need to be involved with and something that we need to be attuned to. So lots and lots of intelligences. And that's important. I'd like to pause now. I feel I've given you quite a little bit to think about, and ask you, you can use that list I've just given you. What intelligences do we need to add, perhaps, or do we need totally to succeed in our current world? And we asked ourselves that question, which is where we got to in the book. And I'd quite like to hear what you think. So we're going to ask you for another poll, and you'll see the 8 Gardner intelligences and a space for another. And if you say other, fine, we'll have a think about that. But do please tell us what you think about what intelligences we need now in our world. Okay, we've got interpersonal is in the running, first of all. Yeah. Oh, really hot runner, interpersonal. Technical and digital, quite low. I'm interested in that. Mathematical and logical is also very low, which I understand too. Wow. interpersonal skills, interpersonal intelligence is absolutely key, romping away here. Music. Oh, those of you who love music, you're way down there, 2%. It's not just being able to write or listen to music. It's that rhythm thing. It's that pitch. It's understanding nuance and intuition that Gardner was talking about. But that's fine. We'll leave it at that. So we have got an absolutely clear winner. 71% of you think that interpersonal skills are the key that we need. And I'm really pleased to see that, because that is actually what we are talking about. But it's a little bit more than just understanding interpersonal issues. I want this, you want that. What we're trying to do is really make sure that we work the interpersonal dimension, which is the relationship. So it's okay to be me to be here and you to be there, and we can kind of come together and we can do that. And we may achieve what we want by doing our own little bit. But by and large, if we kind of merge and meld what we're doing so that interpersonally and relationally we are supporting and working with each other, then we will undoubtedly be able to be much more effective. So let's see, how are we doing? Let me tell you what we meant by interpersonal relationship, by relational intelligence. What we meant with this is, oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. What we meant by this is a model which is the ability to use information, which we may gather from anywhere. It's what we think ourselves, what other people say to us, what we notice, what we absorb, to use information about relations to understand and develop them for positive purpose. And we kind of put that in because if we don't put the positive purpose in, then we're at risk of being accused of being manipulative, political with a small p, self-aware, self-interested. And as soon as we put self-interest in there, then we lose trust, which is very detrimental to any relationship. So we very specifically said the ability to use information to understand and develop relationships for positive purpose. Now, I guess there'll be some of you sitting there, well, what's positive? You know, my positive be somebody else's positive. Yeah, and that's fine. And that's why there are things in this model that we want you to be honest with yourself about. We've got 5 factors, all relating to our connections with others and the information that we're going to pay attention to about different aspects of our relationships. And some of us are much better than this than others. Some of us are really in tune with relationship vibrations, if you like, with relationship nuance, and other of us just aren't. But like any of the other relationships, this can be learned. You may be particularly talented musically, but even if you're not talented, you can probably learn to play an instrument or to appreciate music. So these are things that can be learned. We don't take the view that intelligence is a bucket full of stuff that you're born with and you can't do much about it. And we believe that by examining the relationship against the 5 factors that we're suggesting, we can see if and where we need to take action to try and make the relationship work better for the individuals within it, and obviously sometimes for the organization that may envelop it, because we are talking about working relationships here. And I know there's an awful lot of work done on more intimate relationships, which is relevant, but we are focused here on working relationships. And I've used this sort of old, these 2 pictures. They're very simple. The first one is the importance of taking in information, of not being closed-minded, of being open and receptive to things that we might not otherwise miss. I'm sure you're all aware of that, that thing, you go into a party and you're looking for a particular person and there's lots of people around, but you hear the voice that you're listening for, because we are selective. And if you're a parent, if you're in a crowded park, in a crowded play area, you hear a child crying, you will know if it's your child, even though you may not immediately spot it. So we are specific and we notice what we look for. And we do that because We want to have our expectations confirmed. We want to have our assumptions confirmed, but also because we need a sort of social shorthand. We've got to get on and do stuff quickly. But it's important to notice what it is that we know we are noticing and what we may be missing. So we've got these 5 factors, and we're going to have a look at them and see if we can be honest and say, yeah, I'm not really good at that. That's where my difficulties may come from. That's where I could do some work, and then I can take some action to make the relationship work better for the individuals within it. And the second little picture there, the little screen beam thing, is because it's that line in the middle that we're really interested in. It's not just the 2 individuals, it's how they connect, and it's connections that matter. I'm just going to pause quickly. Do we have any questions, Eloise or Sarah? Have we noticed anything coming up yet? I haven't actually been tracking.
No questions yet.
No.
Just keep an eye out.
Perfect. Okay, well, I'll press on. Hopefully there'll be some at the end. So our 5 dimensions, you can see them all there on the left: boundaries, intimacy, purpose, importance, and safety. And we think these are relevant to all our relationships, work-related, family-related, social, but we need them to be really clear when it comes to working relationships. Now, there's been a lot of talk lately about boundaries, and I personally think this is one of the critical ones, and I'm going to say a little bit more about boundaries, but they establish expectations more than anything else, and our limits. We know when people are stepping over the boundary. We use the phrase, you know, he overstepped the mark then. And sometimes we know when it's happened, but we haven't always been clear about what that mark was before he or she overstepped it. So establishing them is really clear. And you know, that's now so important with this work-life balance thing that we're all very conscious of. So establishing those at the outset of any relationship is great. As you go along is even better, because sometimes relationships develop and we find that boundaries are kind of blurred, and that's all right. Very often a work colleague becomes a good friend. That's good, but you need to know what's happening. Connected with that little example of a work colleague becoming a friend is the concept of intimacy, and that's the emotional connection and the level of closeness that people have. You're not going to be intimate in any sense with all your work colleagues, but it's important to know that you understand, that you can appreciate what's important to them, at what emotional level they like to work. That's important because we need to establish trust. You can't work with other people and not trust them, because if you do that, you're micromanaging, you're trying to do their job. You have to understand and trust them, and trust is an emotional connection. Purpose is the next one. Is it, what's the reason for the relationship? You know, is it keeping us sane? Because work is so manic, you need somebody to offload to. Is it because you need that person to do their job so that you can do yours? And that is linked to the next one. How important is it? Does it matter if this relationship goes pear-shaped? Very often it does. And if the answer is no, it really doesn't matter, then there's an implied judgment in there, which is worth interrogating. What's the importance of that relationship to me, to them, to the organization, to the team? We said, you know, team changes have been paramount over the last few years. Have our relationships in our team changed? Are we still valuing and making sure that those relationships are perceived to be important? And then lastly, we talked about safety, the level of physical and emotional security. This goes right back. You may remember a theorist called Maslow, who talked about safety levels of motivation. Freedom from threat is what we're talking about here. If you feel threatened at work in any way, physically or emotionally, you can't work. You can't perform as you should. So it's important to understand that before you can begin to call it out. If you're not feeling safe, you need to be able to articulate it. That helps us to identify red flags. What are the warning signs of not feeling safe? Are you frightened to speak in a meeting? Are you nervous about sharing ideas? What steps do we need to take? So those are the 5 dimensions. We think they're all pretty important. We have just a few minutes left for me to explain why I've given you a little bit more detail about boundaries. Boundaries are absolutely critical because of this overstepping of the mark. And if you think of the very simple example of your physical and your personal space, you know how easy it is to feel that you're being crowded. You don't like that. It's uncomfortable. You back off. And emotionally, we do the same. If somebody is crossing an emotional boundary, we back off. We don't feel safe. So we think boundaries, getting those right, is often the key to solving relationship difficulties. Not always, but quite often. Quick poll here, very quick, yes and no. Have your working boundaries changed in the last 2 years, yes or no? Do you think those changes are permanent, yes or no? Just a quickie here, see if you share our belief that boundaries are critical. Yeah, they've changed. They've changed. 80% of you, 81% of you have said they've changed. And yes, those changes are permanent. Oh, they keep coming. 86% say those boundaries have changed. 61% those changes are permanent. 63. So big issue. We need to manage our boundaries. 85% of you have changes. 62% of you think they're here to stay. Really important. What can we do about them? Let's see what we can do about them. First of all, you can define what's expected. It's very easy to work with blurred boundaries by really being clear about the expectations. What I need, what do you need? I'm not sure I can meet that need. How can we manage that? This is something we're often very scared of, often scared of. You know, I have a friend who's quite introverted, and she loves to entertain, but she never sends an invitation until about a week before she wants you to come. And we're friends. We want to go and eat together. We want to have working relationship around socialization. And the reason she doesn't send those invitations is because she's frightened we'll say no. And she's scared. Her expectations are low that we will support her in this relationship. So if she said, you know, I really want you to come to dinner, tell me when you can, that's clear, we understand. But just, oh, can you come next Saturday? No, it's not there. Level of professionalism, absolutely critical. You know what you're there for, you know what you're there to do. But I can't do this, but I will do that. And some of us find real difficulty around this. We find boundaries and professionalism quite easy when we're perhaps writing a proposal. You know, that's out of scope. We can't manage that. We find it more difficult when it's ourselves. But if we're very clear about what our skill set is, what we can offer, where we offer it, we will be treated with respect and courtesy that will give us a sense of value and a sense of achievement, which is really critical. It stops us being inappropriate. I think the third one is now more important than ever. Now that we do have this big blurred boundary between home and work, how much we should work, how long should a working day be, all of this. It's easy to overstep our own personal boundaries. We need to make time for ourselves. And unless we set that boundary, we are likely not to. We need to respect our own boundaries. And I think we are becoming more aware of this more and more, but we still have people who are bringing work home when they maybe shouldn't be. We still have people who believe that it is important to be on call all the time. We have to manage that, otherwise we do nobody any good, either at our own level, our families, our teams, or our organizations. And preventing conflicts, that's not about avoiding difference. Preventing conflicts means managing difference before it gets. And when we do that, it's around clarity again, what's expected. This is what I need, this is what you need. Where can we make this work? Where can our relationship make this work? And if we have trust in a relationship, we are much more able to deliver on the task. And if we're doing all of that, we can perhaps motor on with the task without having to fret about fixing difficult, frustrating relationships. So that's just a little look at one aspect of the model. The others are equally important. I really do believe that. And I do hope you'll go to the book to get a little bit more information around that. But I'm aware that we're running out of time. So I just want to show you this last slide, which are going back to the 5 factors. It's looking at those 5 dimensions of relational intelligence and suggesting some questions that you can ask yourself and giving you some things to consider. If you look at that, if you were to give yourself a radar score and you put these 5 dimensions of boundaries, purpose, safety, intimacy, and importance, and you think of a particular working relationship, and you give yourself a score, perhaps 0 to 5 on each of those dimensions, you might find in any particular relationship that your boundaries are clear. You know what you're doing, so you can do a 5 there. And you can probably do a 5 on, or a 4 on purpose. Your role's changed a little bit, but you do know what you're doing. But perhaps you don't feel very safe. Perhaps you are nervous about stepping out of line, saying something that won't be appreciated. And perhaps you don't feel there's any trust or intimacy. Is this an important relationship? If the answer's 5, you've got to deal with those lower scoring dimensions. If it's not, then how do you extricate yourself without doing damage to both yourself and to others? So just some questions to ask yourself. I mentioned earlier the real need for honesty when you do that, and some things to consider around moving a relationship forward if it feels as if it's being bogged down in difficulty. If it's scoring 5 on everything and you're really enjoying that relationship, then wow, good luck. And I'm so pleased to hear that. So I think I'm going to pause there. I do hope we've got some questions. I'm going to turn to Eloise now and hope that A, her sound is working well, and B, that we have a few questions to chew over.
Thank you, Patricia. That was fantastic. There's such a lot of useful information and really practical. So yes, we have got a couple of questions coming in. Don't forget, if you have something, pop it in the Q&A. So here's one. Do you think that the poll answers could depend on age or experience, or do you think that age or experience is irrelevant?
Well, I think that's a really good question. Age and experience are never irrelevant. I say that. Obviously, importance is one of the dimensions that changes. You know, when you're a young, thrusting professional, your working relationships are really critical. As you maybe approach retirement, they become less so. And you know, if you're having difficulty with somebody at work and you're leaving in a few months, then you're not going to worry too much. So yes, they do matter, which is why it's important that you deal with this, you know, for yourself. You take this as an individual issue. Having said that, the work that we based the book on spans huge age ranges. You know, we work with a lot of people from late teens through to retirement. We really do, and across all sectors: fast-moving tech sectors, R&D sectors, slow-moving. Some chemical industries are quite slow. You know, so we move, and so yes, it matters. Yes, it makes a difference. The research seems to suggest that these are rather generic issues, but their application of them is very specific, which is why the book is full of self-assessment and self-reflection, because it's about you. You are the part of the relationship that we can work with. We can't work with the other people there. We don't have them. I'm not sure if that answers, but come back to me if not.
Yes, I thought that was really useful. Here's another one. Regarding the poll about the change in boundaries over the last 2 years and the high response that they have changed, I wonder what you would recommend people do if they feel that the change was negative to re-establish a new boundary.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it? Because when things do change, an almost instinctive response is to worry about what we've lost. You know, if I were to do a little exercise with you now and ask you all to stand up wherever you are and change something about your appearance. I mean, I can't see you, but if I were to ask you to do that, just simply change something about your appearance, most of you, I'd go so far as to say 85% of you would take something off. You'd take your glasses off, you might take a scarf off, you might take a jacket off, you would remove something, because we're hardwired to think of change as loss. So one of the things you can do to kind of help yourself get over that, because, you know, change is inevitable, and no matter how much you resist it, if you don't manage a new boundary, if you don't manage a new environment, a new normal, the consequences for yourself are likely to be damaging. So one of the things we like to suggest to people is say, okay, that's what you're losing, and that's front of mind, and we understand that. What didn't you like about the way things were in the past? What will you lose that you won't be sad to see the back of? And most people can come up with quite a few things. Well, you know, I won't have to do that on a Monday morning anymore, or I won't have to go into that office and do that every Thursday. So a list of things that you don't mind losing. Okay. Now, can you see positives in the new change? Can you see anything that you might like about it? And we work with people to try and find things that they can begin to develop, But the important thing is you've got to allow people to say goodbye to what's gone, to the boundaries that they had, that they probably worked hard, they got clear, other people knew them, and now they've got to knock those down and start again. So yes, we go back, I think, to the relational intelligence. Okay, what's important? Where won't you go? What boundaries won't you step over? What are the consequences of not getting this right? We go back to that intelligence. What can we do? What do we know? And what can we do with it? And I think that's what I'd say.
Fantastic. And this one's made me chuckle. You might appreciate this or not, Patricia. Do you think we need a version of the book for managers and HR? I think they want you to write another one.
Mentioned the second edition, didn't I?
Yeah. I suppose I'm hoping that a lot of the content will be applicable to anyone at any level. So hopefully managers and HR would find it useful too.
Certainly managers. In fact, I can share with you that a very young, successful and upcoming manager that I know of is being given the book for his next birthday present by my mate, who's his mum. So it's being used for managers. We had in mind, as we wrote it, HR professionals as well, and L&D people who are trying to help people to develop, because I think HR professionals, L&D professionals are very often, they have a clarity about how they want back to culture, how they want the culture of their organization to work, how they want the culture to look. And that's often come down from senior management. This is the culture we need. And today, you know, the words we're hearing are agile, responsive. And the professionals are saying, yeah, they hear the words, but we're meeting such resistance, such pushback. We're not getting that culture changing. And quite often the answer is at the team level. Leaders can impact the team culture because they can display different behaviors. They can display different approaches towards managing relationships that change their culture. And particularly if we're working with the level of management that will be very senior in due course and perhaps not too far ahead, that level of management can really start to change a culture and ultimately change an organization and its brand and its image of how we work with and how they are spoken about. You know, great place to work. This organization, the culture is one we want to be part of. We feel valued. The relationships are great. It's that sort of thing. So yes, it is very important, I think, for managers and HR. But we're open to second edition as well.
Good to hear. Good to hear. And I think this is the last question for the moment, but it's a good specific question. It's hard to enforce boundaries when people that are asking you are senior. You want to create a good impression, but you're spreading yourself too thin. Do you have any suggestions on how to handle it?
I know this is so difficult. This is the question I mentioned earlier on. How do I manage my boss?
Mm.
And it is so difficult. And first of all, I would say this, wouldn't I? But the key thing is having a good relationship with him, understanding what he needs as well, or she, sorry, understand what he or she needs as well as what you need and what you can offer. And you know, if we go back to these 5 dimensions, the importance one, yeah, we can tick that off, can't we? The relationship with your boss is important. The consequences of that going wrong are not good. Boundaries. Is he asking too much of you? Or are you perhaps not quite delivering to where you agreed to deliver? And again, back to honesty. And this really requires clarity. The lack of a good relationship makes it more difficult. You have to trust each other. And therefore, when we talk about trust, we're bringing to a relationship our capabilities, our intimacy, our kind of our emotional self. And to create that trust, we need to bring a lack of self-interest. So you don't go to your boss and say, you're asking too much of me. This is all your fault. This is terrible. I can't do this. Because that's all about you. You need to be along the lines of, how can we work together to manage this? I understand what you need from me, but there are only 24 hours in a day, or whatever, however you phrase this, because there's that well-being thing as well. You have to look after yourself. What does having that conversation say to you, or as you ask yourself about having that conversation, what does it tell you about the safety you feel in your relationship? And this is a really big issue. And one of my colleagues, Megan Wrights, who you may have come across, talks a lot about speaking truth to power and how you feel safe in a relationship. We've had all the Me Too, which is all around physical safety, but there was a lot of psychological bullying in that as well. And it's the psychological bullying that most of us find really threatening and really difficult. We're not used to it. And as I say, we tend not to do it ourselves. So managing that, how you can create a good working relationship using these dimensions is where I'd suggest you start. If you are dealing with a real bully who would kind of poo-poo all this stuff, is there somewhere else you can go? Who else can you get to help? Because if you are dealing with that sort of thing, you won't be able to deal with it on your own, at least not, and stay safe. So never forget that you may be focused on a particular relationship, but your network is wider than that. I don't know, again, if that helps. It's difficult to generalize, I guess, because I sometimes think some of these questions come with specifics in mind, and I don't know what you've been through in order to ask the question. Seek help, and if the help starts in the book, fine, but don't be on your own.
Yes, I thought that was great advice, Patricia. Thank you. That was a really useful session. And if you do want to keep following Patricia online, here's her LinkedIn page. So you can sort of follow what's going on, and I don't know, maybe get in contact.
Too. I'd love to hear.
I'll also plug our next session. So September's business book of the month is Double Your Price by David Pelzani. It's on Thursday, the 28th of September at 2 p.m. UK time. And the masterclass will be on pricing, why everything you think you know is wrong. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Patricia. That you'll also get a link to complete a survey about today's session afterwards. So apologies in advance for my terrible connection. Feel free to share that as well. And I hope to see you all next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.